Seliyashona ilanga kumsombuluko ntambama ngikubingelele mbukeli ngikwamukele khona la kunqa phambili SABC 1 Mzansi for sure. This is Expressions. Mbukeli uyazi ukuthi uma uhleli lapha ekhaya ubona lo hlelo lolu kumabona kude wakho lokuchaza ukuthi sesifikile isikhathi sokuthi uhlale phansi unethezeke. Mina nethimba lami sikucobelele ngolwazi ngaphandle kokupholisa amaseko mbukeli nasihloko esikhuluma ngaso namhlanje. Mina igama lami ngo-Azaria wakwaKhoza. Mbukeli, umthethosisekelo wezwe udlala indima eqakathekile ekuvikeleni amalungelo ethu singabantu balapha eNingizimu Afrika. Basically, the constitution iyinsika yezwe which governs indlela esiphila ngayo. Ingabe mbukeli ucabanga ukuthi umthetho sisekelo walapha kulelizwe benefits us thina sonke nasizakhamuzi, noma ubona ngathi umthethosisekelo kunezindawo lapha ekudinga ukuthi ubuyekezwe khona? Also given the fact that mbukeli inkululeko sayithola ngo-1994 and izwe selishintshile impela since then, mhlambe imithetho eminye kufanele ukuthi ishintshe. The constitution supports equality and multiracial protection, but also the real empowerment comes with strong implementation. Mbukeli, akasibukele lo mbiko olandelayo sizwe kabanzi mayelana ne-constitution yethu yalapha kwelengabadi. Izingxoxo ezabanjwa ngo-1990 zaletha ithemba kubantu balapha eNingizimu Afrika. Ngemva kokhetho lwentando yeningi olwasingathwa ngonyaka ka-1994 kwethulwa umthethosisekelo owesikhashana. Kwase kuqala umsebenzi wokushicilela lo mthethosisekelo okwaba umsebenzi owathatha iminyaka emibili. Phakathi kwabantu abebehola izingxoxo kubalwa loyo osengumongameli wezwe njengamanje umnumzana uCyril Ramaphosa kanye noRolf Meyer noyinxusa laseMelika lalapha eNingizimu Afrika.
Africa reaffirms that she is continuing her rise from the ashes. Whatever the setbacks of the moment, nothing can stop us now. Whatever the difficulties, Africa shall be at peace.
Kwathi mhla ziyisishiyagalombili enyangeni kaNhlaba ngonyaka ka-1996 kwamukelwa umthethosisekelo walapha eNingizimu Afrika ngo-elethu.
By our presence here today, we solemnly honor the pledge we made to ourselves and to the world that South Africa shall redeem herself and thereby widen the frontiers of human freedom.
Sekudlule iminyaka engamashumi amathathu ke kwenzeka lokhu. Umthethosisekelo walapha kulelizwe usaqhubeka nokuba yinsika yezwe, kodwa ke akubona bonke abantu abagculisekile ngokuqukethwe kulomthethosisekelo.
Mina, honestly, I feel like our constitution is best. There's nothing wrong with it, but the implementation, poor. I feel like our politicians or whoever who must make sure they are failing a constitution.
I think it's good on paper, genuinely speaking. I think when you look at a lot of criticisms and thoughts on the South African Constitution itself, it's very well written in all the legal frameworks that we have. I think the biggest problem might just be the implementation and the holding of people accountable in certain spaces. I think that was really letting down, I'd say, a lot of the youth particularly, and a lot of more so disadvantaged people.
What's unfolding now at the Madlanga Commission, for instance, is showing us that there have been many loopholes in our constitution that have been exploited and taken advantage of by certain people in power. And I think that, look, the constitution on paper may also be fair, but the way that it's executed and implemented, as we can see today, by the circumstances, for instance, I'm a doctor working in the public sector. It's much to be desired. We have a lot of work to do, and there's a lot that can be improved.
Leyo ke mbukeli imibono yabantu abasha emgwaqeni yaseGoli bakhuluma mbukeli ngehloko esikhuluma ngaso namhlanje lapha ku-Expressions babeka imibono yabo mayelana nomthethosisekelo wezwe. Mbukeli we also shared umlando mayelana nomthethosisekelo wethu ukuthi wafoundwa kanjani, also guiding us as a country 30 years later. Joining me right now for the very important conversation mbukeli, I'm joined by Ifan Mangera who oyishoshovu mbukeli sabantu abasha. I'm also joined by Kilebogile Tlhokwe who's a communications specialist. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Expressions.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much for joining us. Kilebogile, I just want to start with you. If you could just, elaborate further the importance of having a constitution and also a constitution that works for abantu lapha eNingizimu Afrika. Yini ukubaluleka kwalonto le? Not just for abantu abasemadrobheni kuphela, but also for the constitution that works for abantu abasemakhaya as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
In fact, I think we have assessed the importance of having the Constitution, and even the constructive criticism that has come around our Constitution is valid and it's important, right? If anything, I believe that it actually advocates for the people who it does not serve in any shape or form. I mean, in the work that I do as a communications and youth development specialist, particularly, there's a lot of young people who. There's NGOs that exist to support young people, right, the youth, especially in underprivileged communities. But then there's also communities that are not even reached, right? And that gap is so wide. And I really do ask myself, Hore, ke eng that needs to happen for the youth to actually feel the impact of the Constitution. And Irfan will come in on this as the work that he does is to educate people about that, right? And already with where we are, already with where we are, young people don't have the sufficient information that they need to empower them to understand their right, to understand how they need to function within the community, but also use their right. And so,
And Ifan, just to rope you in on the conversation as well, I want us to speak about the importance of educating our people at home. And I do understand that back in the days, I remember also when I was still in primary school, we had this little book that we had to read as kids. But how accessible is that book and the importance of having it to be accessible to the people, the general public in South Africa?
I think it's the most important thing. I wish every citizen in this country had access to this booklet because for people to know, own and protect the Constitution, to have the rule of law, to understand their rights and how to claim them, this is the starting point. And yes, government does their role, and Department of Justice every year annually prints and hands this out in various forms. But to understand this, you really have to go beyond just government, right? Because if we as a people want to live the Constitution, because ultimately it's just a book, we need to make sure that we teach each other, each one teach one, the principles of collectivist ideas. And so as an educator, my actual work and role is to teach this book. To make young people understand that they have rights, but they also have responsibilities that accompany these rights. And the key most important thing to understand why we do this work is because half this country, majority of young people, don't even know that. And so when you ask a young person, have you heard about this? Likelihood they'll say they've heard about it. Less likely that they'll say that this Constitution protects their rights. And more likely, at least 48% of this country, particularly young people I'm speaking about, will say that they know the right, but they think the Constitution protects other people's rights more than theirs. And we need to fix this mindset because the reality is your rights are enshrined in here. It's protected. Through whatever court you go to, through the services, whether it's police services, whether it's social services, all of those rights are enshrined and protected here in. And I think for a lot of the work we need to do is to make sure people understand where they can go, how they can access these rights.
But then, how do we then, change the psyche of people, especially when it comes to service delivery? Things like rights to health care are enshrined in our Constitution. But even emakaya, we've made it a norm that when you go to a public hospital, it has to be a struggle. When you have to go to a Home Affairs office, you literally have to prepare yourself emotionally, then how do we then change the psyche of the people for them to be aware and to know that service delivery is their right and is enshrined in the Constitution?
I think it starts with us as a people.
Yeah.
What do we want?
Yeah.
We are happy to pay for services at private sector
Yeah.
and get that experience. What are we doing towards our own communities?
Yeah.
If you go and look at clinics or post offices, I mean, I ran a campaign once in my area where the post office had bushes growing this high. And those are the same post offices where our grannies, our grandfathers are waiting for to get their grants.
Yeah.
And this is unsafe, it's unhealthy, and so on. So that same cycle goes on.
Yeah.
For me, it's to say, we have to own the space. Public spaces are there for us to also have a responsibility to look after.
Yeah.
And when we see wrongdoing, when somebody is carrying out corrupt activities, it's our responsibility to report it, but to also make sure that we push the community to hold them accountable.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. Well, Mbukeli, okamanje sithathe qo ey'tolo, but siyathanda ukuthi sizwe uvo lwakho ngesihloko esikhuluma ngaso. Our social media handles are right on the screen right now. Xhumana nathi usitshene ukuthi mhlambe ucabanga ukuthi umthetho sekelo walapha eNingizimu Afrika kudingekile ukuthi ubuyekezwe ukuze uhambisane nenkathi esiphila kuzo njengamanje lapha eNingizimu Afrika. This is Expressions right here on SABC 1. Siyabuya.
Welcome back. You're still tuning into Expressions right here on SABC 1. Kanti ke Mbukeli saqhubeka nokuphawula inyanga yabantsha. Siqondile ke into yokubana masidlane indlebe nabafundi balapha Winifred Nomzamo Mandela High School ukuze nabo ke basixelele into yokubana le nyanga ingabuthetha ntoni kubo. Do you believe that i-constitution yethu has changed impilo zenu njengabantu abatsha?
I think to improve their constitution first, we need to let go of the past, and then also the second thing is to let the youth lead instead of ukuthi abantu abadala abahleli ku government bahlale pha with all the ideas, not having any new ideas or anything like that. They have to let the youth lead.
Our hero, which is Nelson Mandela, he once said that the future of today is the leaders of the youth of today is the leaders of tomorrow. But how I see it, it's actually the total opposite. Why? Because we are living in an environment whereby we are being discriminated. The constitution itself, like there's where it's wrong, there's where it's right. Such as it also talks about the right to shelter, the right to education, the right to life. But firstly, let me talk about the right to life. You find that a lot of people, like that anyone can kill anyone at any time, and then they'll say that they're investigating, and then they'll say that they're investigating, only to find out that after some couple of months they'll be like, we have dropped the investigations. Why? Because of it needs more time, it needs more what you call more evidence and stuff like that.
What the constitution needs to change is, the resources of the schools. Our school right now, it's lacking many things, and as she said, they are sitting there and eating money while we don't have chairs, while we have lack of technology in schools and other things like that. So I think the only problem is that, they want to be called one of the richest in South Africa. Things like that, they want their names up high, whereas they don't have a heart to say, we need to help our kids, they are suffering, so that we can tackle this poverty, so that we can have future leaders, as he said that the youth of today are the leaders of tomorrow.
I think what needs to change is the schools to specialize us to help our futures to become more brighter by adding more technology, reduce this situation of infrastructure.
We as people have to create awareness and know our rights that are in the constitution so that we can live better. And I think the government also needs to act upon those people who go against the constitution, because right now I think they are not doing their best to act.
When you reflect back to the youth of 1976 in Njengomntomtsha, what comes to your mind?
They were living whereby in a system whereby there was apartheid, there was like a lack of education, since most of our grandmothers, most of our grandfathers, they do not have a good career. They do not have a good job and stuff like that.
As you can see now, we have a basic right to education, and we have teachers, qualified teachers, bafundile futhi, and they do their best to make sure ukuthi nathi siyaphumelela empilweni.
Do you think izikolo they are taking bullying seriously?
No, currently no, because I've been to many different schools. I'm not just blaming this school. I've been to many different schools, 7 schools I think. And then in all those schools, they never took bullying as a serious thing. It would be just a thing of taking the matter to the teacher, and then the teacher would say, don't do it again, but then the learners still do it again.
Have you been personally bullied?
Yes, I have many times.
And how did you deal with it?
You know, most of the time, I'm that one person that I can hold my feelings to myself. Like, I'm strong emotionally. The only thing that I use to take out what I have is to just lie down and just cry, sitting alone. That is how I take care of everything, rather than just thinking of committing suicide or other things. But then, as a matter of fact, it's like I feel like there's nothing that I can do to change how bullying is treated, because nowadays bullying is a very normal thing.
Youth Yaga 1976, Baslwela, and we got the rights. But now we are facing challenges of like lack of infrastructure and resources. Textbooks, we don't have textbooks. We have some, but like we don't have, you see, a lot of them. And then we are facing like electricity issues. We can't do copies. Learning can't take place like when there's bad weather. Those are the type of challenges we're facing right now.
The only problem that creates higher unemployment rate is that, last year I was once encouraged by my teacher. She told me that AI was created by a person.
Yeah.
So which means I have more knowledge than AI. Since then, I believed in myself. And I think that is what the youth of today needs, to be encouraged more in schools and at home, because we have some of the parents, they don't care about their kids, and some teachers, they don't care as long as they are getting their salaries. That is the problem of now.
If we check into like China, whereas if you have more practicals and skills, you get to like find better ways onto like fighting the high unemployment rate and coming with more things like AI and finding more things that can help the country.
What needs to be created is that maybe there could be sort of like social workers in schools and stuff like that. Then that social worker could have maybe a box there and then tell them at the assembly that if you have a problem, write a letter and take it to that box, so that we could decrease this kind of issue.
I want us to go back to the issue of pregnancy that Lihlohonolo also raised, because if we look at the South African Constitution, it does allow abafundi abathe bakhulelwe esikolweni lokubana baqhubeke nesikolo. Do you think mhlambe xa sijonga lo constitution and the education department yenza isigqibo esi-right?
Yes, they did do isigqibo esi-right, because they also ukuba mithi, it doesn't mean ukuthi future yakho it's over for you. Some people do mistakes. It might happen ukuthi maybe it wasn't her fault, maybe she was raped or something, you see. So I think she also deserves to come back to school, afunde.
There should be programs that are done at schools to teach learners the dangers of teenage pregnancy, substance abuse, and gangsterism.
Some teenagers now do the mom vlog, teen mom, and they encourage it. So like as some teenagers, they see it as a normal thing, that so it's a normal thing to get pregnant, and then their parents don't judge or the communities don't judge, because some people will comment on some, you guys are so, you look nice, you look teenage mom looks good on you. Instead of like teaching learners, they encourage them into having babies. So social media does have an influence.
Ngibonge kakhulu kumlingani wami uKholosa wakolubisi exoxisana nabaholi bethu bakusasa mayelana iconstitution yethu yalapha eNingizimu Afrika. Babalule izinto eziningi ngembukeli. Bakhuluma about bullying, bakhuluma about AI. They also spoke about infrastructure, which I think is one of the most important things because iconstitution yethu yalapha eNingizimu Afrika iyasho mbukeli ukuthi idignity is one of the things ekufanele zirestore ebantwini bethu. But uzokhumbula ukuthi ngonyaka ka2018 umnyango wezemfundo esisekelo waphusha mbukeli ukuthi zonke izikolo ezisebenzisa ama-toilet omgodi zizoqedwa by 2018 kodwa manje u2025 kodwa zisasekhona izikole ezisebenzisa izindlu zangasese ezingumgodi especially ezifundazweni ezifana no-Eastern Cape kanye no-KZN again. Mbukeli uthini umbono wakho ngehloko esikhuluma ngaso namhlanje lapha ku-Expressions wakalisa uvo lwakho okwamanje sisaya ey'tolo ungayindawo siyabuya. Siphinde sikwamukele mbukeli usabukele Expressions khona la kunqa phambili SABC1 uma ngabe sanungena hlala phansi nethezeka namhlanje mbukeli sikhuluma ngeconstitution yalapha eNingizimu Afrika ngaphambi kokuthi siye ey'tolo ke we heard ingane zesikole zikhuluma about the importance of implementing izinto ezinjengo AI ukuze kuphucuke our future as the youth yalapha eSouth Africa. Your reactions?
Thank you so much. And I actually love what you said before we went to the ad break.
Yeah.
You know, that there was a plan to implement toilets, and to this day we still haven't seen that, right? Goal being achieved. And even with what one of the learners have said about bullying, and I think that there's so many issues that young people are facing, right? And there is this big conflict between what our constitution should be implementing alongside the failure of accountability actually being taken for the things that are still yet to come that we actually expect. And so some of the things that I actually saw when we were doing running a program with Raw Leadership a couple of years ago, where we went into a school funded by a specific corporate to encourage the learners to find a challenge within their school or community to change, right? And you see these kids like rallying up to build a library in their school or a computer center, or finding a way to make sanitary towels available to the learners. And so I think that spirit dies when young people don't see reparation, when they don't see leaders actually being held accountable.
Yeah, because young people are yearning to be part of the solution. Okwamanje ke mbukeli ake sambe sethi siqula lapha mbukeli ku social media and find out ukuthi wena engabe uthini. Do you think ukuthi mhlambe umthetho sisekelo walapha eNingizimu Afrika udinga ukubuyekezwa yini na? Okumqala mbukeli umuntu esizoxhumana naye uSihlomo Eli Cohen uthi yena I couldn't agree more. The South African Constitution and the democratic system is one of the best in the world. Olandelayo ke mbukeli uWinzi Bhuka Mweketsi uthi yena it is a flawed constitution. It must be reviewed and rewritten. Usanelisiwe Jezile yena uthi not at all. People should govern, but do we? I remember in 2021 we were being forced for vaccination for COVID-19. What about our rights? What is public participation for? We were told that we would lose our jobs if we don't vaccinate. That is a very, very important one. And, you know, speaking about access to health, I do remember that in 2021, you know, at the height of COVID-19, a lot of people forced, like they were being obligated, you know, to take the COVID-19 jab. You know, where do we then assess information that could fight for us in that type of situation?
I think on the one hand, we have to recognize that this was a global crisis for health, right? And health doesn't discriminate against who and what color people are and so on. And so government had to take measures to protect the population as a whole. And therefore, that was the reason for them to implement vaccination drives. People could resist. It was within their rights to say, I'm not going to take this vaccine. And partly the problem, again, is that people are not educated enough to say, you know, you can resist this, or this is what's the benefit, and this is what it's meant to be doing. And I think that kind of public education programs has severely been lacking, and why the perception has been where people feel like their own rights are being stripped from them. I think empowering people to know the Constitution helps them to say, okay, in this situation, I actually may say no. and I have the right
but
to do
then
so.
people, they would say that you were going to lose your job because then you wouldn't have, access to get into your workplace because you didn't vaccinate. But Mbukeli, asiqhubeke with some of those Facebook comments sizwe uvo lwakho lapha ekhaya ukuthi wena uthini. Olandelayo Mbukeli uNtante Christian Mbuyisa uthi yena umbuzo wami uthi umthetho sisekela uyabavikela yini abantu besifazane njengoba behlukunyezwa futhi bebulawa kangaka. Bayabulawa bese kuboshwa umsolwa kuthi kungakapheli no8 years aphume ngoshwele. Hayi bonjalo. Okugcina Mbukeli umbone sizowuthola kwinina ubuya kusifiso Wish Dlamini eDandi uthi umthetho sisekelo umile ukhona inkinga abantu abaphethe baphumile kakhulu emgomeni womthetho sisekelo bazenzela okwabo okuzosiza imindeni yabo kanye nabangani babo manje sekungathi umthetho sisekelo awunamsebenzi kanti ikubantu abaphethe. Bringing it to you, I just want to know then, how does corruption hinder the prosperity of the government implementing a constitution, ebantwini? Yeah.
Sure. I was raised, my grandfather was an avid believer and teacher of the power of the mind, the subconscious mind. Yeah. And it takes about 8 years to form that subconscious mind and eventually that's the adult you become unless you intentionally change that. Yeah. And I'm saying that to say children, young people, okay, the adult, but obviously coming from a child, but the adult, all of us, we learn by seeing. Okay. Then before we learn by being told what's right, right? And so corruption really, it's eroding not just our souls, but our minds and the young minds that we're raising as a society in a way that I don't even think that we can fathom the damage we are doing. Yeah. Because when young people don't see that there is a consequence for doing something that is wrong, and even with the education that is required about the Constitution and the rights that they have, that they need to exercise, I can't imagine, the type of future leaders we are raising if we are not actually showing and demonstrating to say there is a consequence for something that you do that is wrong. And how do I now function knowing that there are consequences to my actions, and on top of that, we also need to show them what integrity leadership looks like. That's another whole conversation,
Hayi Mbukeli osolwazi wethu bayasho ukuthi Mbukeli corruption iyasinqanda ukuthi siphokophele phambili siyizwe lalapha eNingizimu Afrika. Ake siye intolo Mbukeli siyabuya. This is Expressions ongayindawo. Khamashashane esinqawunqawini ezonke izizwe emagagula noma ikuphi la usibukele khona Mbukeli njengamanje ubukele Expressions khona la ku SABC 1. Uma ngabe usanda ungena namhlanje Mbukeli sikhuluma ngeconstitution, umthetho sisekelo walapha eNingizimu Afrika ukuthi wena njengomuntu omusha do you feel ingathi uyakuvuna na noma ngabe uyakuprotecta na ukuthi uphokophele phambili noma mhlambe our constitution presents izihibe ukuze thina singabantu abasha singakwazi ukuthi siphokophele phambili. Njengamanje we are joined by abantu abasha lapha studio abaholi bakusasa who are going to help us to dissect this matter. Ladies, welcome to Expressions.
Hi. Hello.
Nqobile, I just want to start with you first. Umthetho sisekelo wethu walapha eNingizimu Afrika uyasho ukuthi the people shall govern. As umuntu omusha, do you feel ukuthi ngathi wena you have that right and that power in your hands ukuthi you shall govern and ukwazi ukuthi uphokophele phambili njengomuntu omusha?
I think as abantu abasha, akuna like example. But I think when you look back to Your Fees Must Fall and how that came about, there is hope for us to be able to lead the struggle. I don't think isingahlala nje sigoqe izandla. No, I think there's hope. I think we can definitely move the struggle forward,
Mila, last year in November, our president, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, did declare GBV as a national crisis. And we know that GBV is one of those huge problems and impediments that we are facing as a country. I mean, statistics show ukuthi muva nje ubulawe abantu besifazane abadlula ku 5,578 and ingane ezi-1656 and umthethosisekelo wethu uyasho ukuthi abantu besifazane kanye nezingane fanele ba-protected. Where do you think we go wrong as far as when we're talking about GBV? Do you think inkinga implementation?
I think it is with the implementation. I think that even though at a government level there is a lot of legal frameworks and documents and legislation that, you know, ensure our right to survive, you know, as women, as men, I think that at a social level, it's not really clicking. And I think that's why these rates are still so high. But then I think that implementation is one of the reasons why that there's a disconnect between what's going on at the government level and then what's going on here at the social level.
Z, just to rope you in on the conversation as well, abantu abasha bakhulumile even before siya ey'tolo uma semgwaqeni ukuthi umthetho wethu muhle impela ephepheni, but when it comes to implementing imithetho on the ground, kubonakala ngathi kula uspeeda khona. Do you agree with that?
I completely agree with that. I think the biggest thing we are facing is corruption, is ineffective governance and leadership.
Yeah.
And I think at the same time, the fact that we have a youth that is not empowered with their rights, with the options available to them to act, we end up in a situation where we sort of can't change all these things that need changing. And I think as much as we have this great constitution, it is up to us to ensure we operationalize it and make it work for us.
Yeah. Mela, you know, when the constitution was written, you know, when we adopted the constitution, I mean, izinto seemed rosy at the time. We were all hopeful, but then now izinto sezishintshile, you know, khona inflation, abantu abasha abasebenzi. We are also facing a very huge problem right now of undocumented immigrants. So do you think ukuthi mhlambe because the constitution esinayo yabhalwa ngaleyo minyaka sekuyisikhathi ukuthi ibuyekezwe right now so that ikwazi ukuqondana negigaba esibhekane nazo njengamanje?
I think that like we're in a generation where we don't really know what it was like before the writing of the constitution, and so we only have now and we're only seeing the consequences of what should be a good constitution. And then the current events that are happening right now, I think what's frustrating is that there's a lot of, maybe not misinformation is the right word, but I think when it comes to situations like undocumented migration, a lot of the things that are going on, a lot of the discussions that are going on are putting a lot of blame when it comes to social failures and structural failures on undocumented immigrants instead of holding accountable our government and our legislations that are meant to support everybody that lives in the country.
Ngobile, your views on this very same question? Do you think mhlambe fanele ubuyekezwe umthethosisekelo wethu so that it deals nenkinga esibhekene nazo njengamanje? Because in 1994 inflation ibingekho phezulu le way phezulu ngakhona manje.
I think what people don't know is we have a living document, which means that people get to submit to the Constitutional Court, right? And people need to know that, right? And when that happens, that means the Constitution can change. It's not dead, and it's not that we cannot change it, or it's not that it's outdated. I don't think it's outdated. I think we absolutely can change it. I think people just need to know that they can submit and their submissions to the Constitutional Court.
But then how important is that, you know, informing people? Because if there are amendments ekufanele enziwe kuyashiwo ukuthi wozani nizozwakalisa imibono yenu noma mhlambe kukhona inkosi endaweni, induna yendawo, mhlambe your civil society organizations, they can also, you know, submit imibono yenu. But do people know about these things, and why is it important ukuthi abantu bafundiswe ngalezi zinto lezi?
People don't know.
One,
currently it's actually open. Izovalange 6 July, so people can start submitting. Two, I don't think government per se, or even maybe the news, publicizes this for people to know that, hey guys, this is what's happening. Please start making submissions. And I think people are also reluctant because they've made submissions. They haven't seen anything.
And just to bring you in as well, do you think mhlawumbe abantu sibafundisa enough about this? Because abantu sometimes babona imithetho nje isi-implementwa bengazi ukuthi umsuka wayo usuka ubuyaphi. Do you think fanele sizame ukufundisa abantu ukuthi actually imithetho yethu yalapha eSouth Africa iyakwazi ukuthi ibuye kithi njengezakhamizi?
I mean, definitely. I think the work is being done. I think above all, we need to meet people where they are. So TV is a good avenue. Social media is a great avenue. I also think that people do know and people do participate. I think about last year, I think it was last year when the DTIC released a draft bill where they wanted to change the kind of the national student debt bill, which would make people's student debt available to credit bureaus. And young people submitted. There were drives all over the place being like, hey, don't let this be a thing that happens because it will change our lives. So I think that when it affects us, we do know a bit more. There are just more overwhelming things where I'm like, I wish that as young people, and there are already spaces where we're doing this, but I wish as young people we also understand what our real issues are, how we can come together, and then how to lobby for these things. As Mobile said, they are also the Parliament is taking submissions right now to change the Constitution. I know that there were lovely organizations that have submitted on a menstrual bills rights, a menstrual rights bill. So those things can happen. We just need to work together.
Mila, yini esingayifunda kwintsha yethu yango-1976 njengoba sibungaza inyanga yabantu abasha nje, you know, we're not really comparing because bakhona abantu abacompare intsha yamanje nentsha yango-1976, but if we were to take a chapter from encwadini yabo, yini into esingayifunda kubo ukuze siphokophele phambili njengabantu abasha balapha eNingizimu Afrika?
From the Constitution? From
the youth of 1976.
I'm not too sure exactly how to answer the question, but I think in terms of what the young people should be educated on, this is the question. I think, as was mentioned before, I think that what really should be focused on is just awareness. Just making sure that they understand that there is this document that is actually there for you. And that's something that should be taught from primary school level in a way that's very digestible for them. I think for me as a student right now, I'm not learning about the Constitution as it is, but I'm learning it from doing my own research for other things, for other discussions, for other assignments, for mainly comparing what were the ideals that are put in the Constitution versus what are the results that are being produced today. And even though that has benefited me because now I know about the Constitution, that's not everyone's experience. So again, I think just awareness is the fundamental thing for everyone.
Ngobile, how do we continue roping young people in, because there seems to be a bit of apathy from abantu abasha, especially when it comes to participating in politics and trying to change the world. I mean, a lot of young people say give up kubonakala ngathi ikusasa lethu livindi as young people. And talk to me about the dangers of us being oblivious to as a politiki njengabantu balapha eNingizimu Africa, you know, and why is it important for us ukuthi singene and take charge?
I think, as Uzi said, that young people, how can I put it? I think that we need to meet them where they are, right? So it is social media, one, and it's the problems they actually face, right? So a lot of the things seem up in the air with government and Madlanga. Now people are starting to be interested because they saw Slay Queens on there. Now they're watching, right? But you need to...
Now it's relatable.
Now it's relatable. They can have conversations about it, but meet them where they're at. What are the real things that they are facing? One. Two is... I don't want to fearmonger, but maybe start doing that in a way to be like, hey, these people that are in Parliament are not going to live forever. Who's going to take over, right? What is the dream that you have for South Africa? Because I think a lot of people and young people are not dreaming anymore. We're very much in the dark. And maybe we do need to start dreaming about what we'd like to see.
Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us right here on Expressions. Mbukeli uzwile imbila yaswela umsila ngokulayezela. Now mbukeli njengoba uhleli lapho ekhaya ungaba nesandla emthethweni wethu walapha eNingizimu Afrika. $8. This is Expressions. Siyabuya. Nethezeka mbukeli usabukeli expressions khona la ku SABC 1 Mzansi for sure, ku SABC Plus kanye na ku SABC Lihaya as well. You know, before we went to an ad break, we had a very heated conversation with the ladies that side. Your reactions?
Yeah, I was, you know, my mind was running as they were sharing such impeccable observations, especially as young people.
Yeah.
They're absolutely right. Politics is personal. You know, it's personal. Particularly for people who don't realize how much they are impacted negatively by the failure of the leadership and governance that we've seen. And then it's also personal because the call of leaders to stand up and serve their communities is very heavy. That is a very painful burden to carry, you know, and so I think this conversation that's happening digitally, as they've shared, that digitally there is a conversation happening with young people who are saying politics is personal. Young people get involved. How can you make an impact within the Constitution? You know, raise your voice. You have these rights, right? But then that moral fiber and the values that are not maintained from the Constitution implemented within our communities and our societies, in all the failures that we see, is what's, you know, creating this struggle within people, not just young people, but within people, to actually raise their hands and say, I want to lead, I want to serve, how can I make a difference? But it's so important for us to bridge that gap because, as they've said, young people are watching us. And in the future, they're the ones who are going to have to lead. And what are we doing as government, as leaders, to empower young people? Because the time will come for them to serve. You know, and are they ready? Of course not, because that gap is so wide. Technology is not being implemented in the way that it needs to be, so that the young people are heard and those rights and that education that they need comes to them and actually say, okay, I'm empowered, I can do this myself and navigate that.
Ivan, your reactions to the discussion we had?
You know, when you work with so many incredible young people, these expressions and these observations are quite similar because I don't believe young people are apathetic. I think they're engaged every day in different forms of struggle. And a protest capital of the world. We know that young people are leading protests, whether it's for mental health, for menstrual products to be available and free. So I've met many of these young people and I don't think they're apathetic. What I think is we need to start taking politics seriously because there's the one area where we've let others decide for us what our future should look like. And so I think a lot of these problems are not attributed to the Constitution. They're attributed to a failure of government and a failure of legislators because people who are elected to parliament are meant to make laws or legislation that is meant to help solve these problems, but instead they are lazy.
Which is one question that I was going to ask you next is, out of all the impediments that we're facing right now as a nation, is there a political will to change things? You know, when you're looking at the situation, do you think that there is a political will to change things?
Not from the establishment currently. I think political will needs to re-emerge like 1976 youth. New wave of energy and impetus to change society. It comes from us as the young people. We need to get registered to vote. We need to engage in political discussion. We need to understand what is the solution. You know, I heard now as well and prior that youth are the leaders of tomorrow. I don't think so. Those young people in Soweto in 1976 were 13, 14-year-olds. And so why not determine the future at that age? So I do genuinely believe that we have the capacity. Younger people are more digital savvy. We know we've started looking at other options globally. What did they do to solve a particular problem and bring it to our own home? And so in the context where our municipalities are failing, I think young people can step up because there's no shortage of work, neither is there shortage of interest in solving that work. We just need to create a system that allows or breaks down the structural barrier so young people have entry. And the best way to do that is to put your hand up to serve. Whether it's serving to go and contest power in the formal sense or go and serve in your community NGOs, community structures, so that your responsibility to shape this country is not taken for granted. They won't look at you 20 years from now and say, but what did you do? You actually started doing from today.
Umthethosisekelo wethu uthi the people shall govern. At this point in time, when you're looking at isizwe esiphila kuso and the situations esiphila kuwo, do you think that's the case? Nanokuthi fanele senzeni in order for us to get to that point ukuthi people should feel empowered?
Sure. You know, someone once said, no one is coming to save you, you know, and I believe that in order for us to lead from a governance perspective, we also need to know how to lead ourselves. You know, personal leadership is even harder, but it's necessary to lead, you know, communities and countries. And so, are the people governing from where I'm standing, particularly speaking to young people on almost a daily basis? Not necessarily, no. The tools of trade that they need, and I think that from, as Irfan has said, you know, from a theoretical, from an ideology perspective, they understand that right? They know how to, you know, bolster through. They've got the zeal and the boldness that they need in order to mobilize and get the attention that is necessary for them to see the change that they want to see. But from a systemic tools that they need, you know, that constructive support to say, okay, now that you've got the spirit to lead, how do we facilitate it for you to be able to, you know, show up in a way that it actually makes that governance real and tangible for them to say, okay, I can see that when I raised my hand or stood up that one day, there's the change. You know, the clinic has been fixed or a library has been set up. And so I think that gap is very wide and a lot of work still needs to be done in making it smaller to bring it to life, that governance that we need.
Let's educate the people at home. How do they access that book? Is it available digitally? Because as I said when we started the show, that I remember in schools sometimes, you know, they would come and distribute it to us. In primary school, we would read it. But is it still available? Can people go out there and read it so that they know what's written and what are some of the rights that are enshrined in that book?
It is available digitally. You can go to the Department of Justice website. You can also go to We the People at South Africa. We're based at Constitution Hill. We work a lot and primarily with young people, specifically bringing them to the Hill, teaching them, getting them to meet lawyers and judges. But this is available. It's often available as well in different forms. So if you are in primary school as a teacher, there are different formats where it's more packaged. Like you were saying, it's easier to understand it if it's less legal. And so there is resources around that. We also have a curriculum called The Elements, which is meant to teach young people using artists who deliver the lessons. And so they can check that out on the We the People SA website. It's available. We want to make this democratized, publicly available so that all young people in this country can know, own and protect this.
All right, lady and gent, thank you so much for joining us right here on Expressions. This was Expressions, Mugeli sikufundisa kabanzi about umthetho sekelo walapha eNingizimu Afrika. This was Expressions on SABC 1, SABC Plus. Ungakhohlwa mbukeli ukuthi siyatholakala na ku SABC lehaye as well. MZ is standing by yena uthi fela khona. Good night.
Fela bona noma wenze njani ngeqame vimvula inetha mina ngofela bona mina ngofela bona mina ngofela bona mina ngofela bona noma wenze njani ngeqame vimvula inetha mina ngofela bona wena madoda how Lendi mengi kalile kumele ngigcine ngilimile yesithweni ngigcine ngifikile mina ngofela khona bafana kushubile balekani manje sengifikile nangaphandle izulu selihlomile kusho ukuthi uzulu sekhona mina ngofela khona sithe zami zonke ziyoxola anginajika intambo sengibona thukutuku zami ziyobongwa jonga bazothi ngiyaloya abebona izinto seziqonda njengesikhule sivuka kukoma abanye bazokowa jonga senjani ngeqame vimvula inetha mina ngofela khona noma wenze njani ngeqame vimvula inetha mina ngofela khona